The Icons of Real Estate Podcast. Are you ready to learn the proven money-making secrets from top-producing icon agents? Ready to skyrocket your business? This podcast is for you. Tune in every week with your host, Tomasz Fonseca, and find out how to implement proven strategies to 10 times your business, from $3 million to $30 million in just 12 months. Brought to you by the Masters at Real Estate Marketing, Ardor SEO.
Welcome to the Icons of Real Estate podcast. I'm your host, Patty Teal. You're really going to be blown away by today's guest. David Atkinson is the president and CEO of ZSphere. They've created a durable, highly efficient building solution intended to save lives and reduce dependency on today's unsustainable water, food, power, and building methods. The ZSphere incorporates unique sustainability features such as freshwater, food, and power production that will revolutionize the way we live and work anywhere in the world, especially disaster-prone areas. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Patty.
Boy, I started reading up on you last night, and I was so excited by this topic and what you can do. I moved to Florida last year, and haven't had a hurricane yet for me, but I've certainly heard about it from people who have lived here a long time. And these structures are made to hold up, and really, it's a game changer.
It is. Thank you, Patty. What we've done at ZSphere. So I too live. I don't live in Florida. I live in Southeast Georgia. That little bit of coastline that Georgia has on the Atlantic, and I live, just down on that coastline, about 12 miles from the ocean. And so we feel the effects of hurricanes too. So I certainly understand, what you're going through in Florida. But what we've done at ZSphere is just a little bit of background on myself. So I come from a very unique and extremely diverse background. I spent many, many decades working in extremely harsh operating environments, whether it was extreme cold or hot, operating machinery, and just, whether it was on the water or on land, wherever it might be. So I've accumulated a diverse set of skills and knowledge around what it takes to operate in those environments, especially when you're talking about extreme winds like hurricanes or ice or snow, whatever it may be. And so I've taken that experience and taken the opportunity. I've also had a tremendous amount of exposure to the construction industry, and many years ago saw an opportunity for many places for improvement, not only in terms of energy efficiency, but certainly seeing the level of devastation. Being an American, we've seen tremendous amounts of devastation, whether it was Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, Hurricane Harvey up in New York and New Jersey, or Hurricane Andrew all the way back in 1992, down in Homestead, Florida. So we've had our share of multi-billion-dollar disasters. And so one of the common threads that I've seen in all of those events, and of course you got more recent examples like Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, or Hurricane Dorian in the Bahamas, Hurricane Michael in the Panhandle of Florida, in Mexico Beach, Panama City. So those more recent examples are extreme hurricanes and extreme devastation, Category 4, Category 5, which normally wipes out and renders 80+% of the infrastructure, buildings, and such useless, and to the point where they have to be rebuilt. The utilities, the power, the water, they are typically centralized. So you have to rebuild the power lines, the water distribution lines, and things like that. And it takes weeks or months to get those infrastructures back up and running before people can even think about rebuilding, whether it's a home or a business, whatever it may be. And so assessing and seeing all of that, I took to task many years ago. Actually, we're going on 13 years of development We've been actively going to market for about 2 years. We're going on our 3rd year. So very exciting times for us. We're getting to that 2 or 3 year point in our startup. Very exciting. We've got traction and all of those good things. And so what we did, we took the task on, when you look at our website, you'll see that we call it reinventing real estate in disaster-prone regions and off-grid areas. And what we mean by that is there have been decades of repeat hurricanes and events in the same areas. And in each case, without exception, the buildings and the infrastructure have always been rebuilt back the same way. And in typical fashion, the second time a hurricane came through after those buildings were destroyed the first time, the second time the hurricane came through, it destroyed those buildings and infrastructure again. So it's no wonder insurance companies are pulling out wholesale of entire regions because they're unable to financially bear the burden of that constant major reconstruction and major expense. So it's incredibly difficult to get premiums in those areas if you're able to get insurance at all. And the sad part about it is the real estate that I'm talking about is exquisite. It's gorgeous real estate that you want to own, you want to develop and enjoy, but because of these, disasters, it can be problematic from an investment protection perspective. So from a real estate investing standpoint, we've created a building that you build it once. It's 100+ year building. And what we've done is we've taken the opportunity to create a value proposition, because when you're living in those disaster prone areas, it's great if you have a resilient building. When you look at the barrier islands in the Carolinas and other places, most of the homes are up on stilts, right?
Mm-hmm.
To keep them away from the storm surge and the flood water and things like that. But they still experience water damage. Wind-driven rain comes through the doors, comes through the windows, and the water's flowing down the walls, inside the windows, those kind of things. So there's still a tremendous amount of water damage and other things that happen. Well, the building structure itself might remain intact, but when those events happen, you still lose power for an extended period of time. You still lose water, wastewater, or communication. And so we've gone to great lengths at ZSphere to create a building and a system that is more or less self-sufficient and self-sustaining. And here's what I mean by that. So we have created a building that's not only resilient to hurricanes and floods and water damage. We keep the water out, by the way. We have a watertight building, so we go to great lengths to keep the water out. When you talk to any insurance company, the upwards of 80+% of the financial burden that an insurance company experiences after a hurricane or anything like that is water damage, whether it's a tornado or whatever it might be. So water damage is the biggest issue. It's the biggest checkbox that we address in the ZSphere. We've created a watertight building. And in addition to keeping the water out, we've created, we call them appliances, and they are appliances that are integrated into our building. And so we use things like solar power and wind power and a generator for backup power, things like that. But what it allows our clients to do, it allows them to build confidently in disaster-prone areas where they know they're not going to lose their building. And Patty, just to a quick data point. So all of our buildings are rated for 200+ mile-an-hour sustained winds, not gusts, sustained winds. So we will clearly meet a Category 5 or higher event. We are third-party validated. We are just starting to sign contracts and go to market in the Caribbean as we speak. And we're looking for opportunities here domestically in the US. And I want to get back to our value proposition. And then I'm going to talk about our market in the US versus the Caribbean. So the the appliances, the integrated resilient appliances that we provide are for power, they're for fresh potable water, drinking water. We also maintain a system for wastewater treatment. So you'll have working toilets, your toilets won't be backing up into your home, like it's happened on many occasions, causing certainly a very unsanitary condition, but a very unpleasant experience. As well as we also are collaborating with satellite communications providers, whether it's here in the United States or down in the Caribbean, to provide resilient communications during and after a hurricane. In other words, everything that we do from a power, a water, a wastewater, and a communications perspective is nonstop. And we will demonstrate here in the next 12 to 18 months, as we experience hurricanes and get a few units built in the Caribbean or the southeastern US, we are going to demonstrate very clearly that it is 100% possible to call it shelter in place, stay home, whatever it may be, stay in your ZSphere, and you will have power, you will have water, you'll have working toilets, showers, and communications, and be safe the entire time. The greatest problem that ZSphere addresses in disaster-prone areas is there's one major problem that we address. Typically, when you have a major event like a category 4 or 5, what happens is the people and the capital leave. They leave the area. Look at Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. Hundreds of thousands of people left, and they're never coming back. On the island of Puerto Rico, they lost over 300,000 people. They left. They went to the United States. They went to Central and South America, and they're never coming back. So what happens also is the capital that they used to spend in the local economy leaves with them. So oftentimes what it does is it throws these local economies into certainly recession conditions, if not depression conditions. And so understanding those priority aspects of problems that needed to be solved in the Caribbean and otherwise, not only is our system resilient and do we provide those resilient capabilities, but we've also created a methodology in which we can literally deploy hundreds of spheres in a very short period of time to quickly rebuild an area, improve the overall resiliency of that area the next time a hurricane or disaster strikes, so that they don't have the widespread capital and people flight the next time that disaster happens. So the greatest value proposition that we provide is when a disaster strikes, we quickly come in and rebuild with our solution, such that the next time something happens, we don't have that wash, rinse, repeat cycle all over again, if that makes sense.
Oh boy, it certainly does make sense. And it's just amazing. You must have been working on this for many years.
I have, and as I said, been working on it for 13 years. Not full time, part time, weekends, evenings, many sleepless nights, but formalized. I myself, I'm an experienced entrepreneur. My partners and co-founders are experienced entrepreneurs. One of the things that we've learned over many years is that market timing is everything to a startup.
Mm-hmm.
And so we studied market timing, and we know our market well, and we understood that it was about the 2019-2020 timeframe that we needed to go to market. We did, and it's amazing. My partners and I look at our market timing, and frankly, we could not have got our market timing any better. So we're very excited as far as that goes. And one more thing, Patty, I want to share with you is that we're not going into a particular area and building one-off buildings, right?
Okay.
The greatest value proposition that a ZSphere offers is that when you have widespread devastation, the best thing that you could do is rebuild communities in an intentional, very planned way. I don't know if you've ever heard of the concept of new urban community or new urbanist communities, walking communities where the residential, the commercial, the municipal, all those microservices and everything are mixed, into the community, and everything is walkable. So those are the type of communities that we are building. Our minimum build is 5 units, but we'll quickly move into 10, 20 and more. And we're going to show people that you can live in a resilient community that immediately after a disaster has all of your essential services, your doctors, your dentists, your restaurants, all of those things. And essentially, Patty, that's what keeps people from leaving.
Wow. That's just, like I said, a game changer. Yes.
Yes. And so I shared with you and your audience that I would come back to some of our challenges in terms of marketing in the Caribbean versus the domestic US. So here's what we found after being many, many years on the ground with a native team. I have a native team in Puerto Rico. They're doing an outstanding job. And what we found on the island of Puerto Rico is the people of Puerto Rico and other Caribbean nations have experienced this pain and this wash, rinse, repeat cycle so many times that they're ready to embrace a change. And our ZSphere structure, it's round, and it's round intentionally because a round building deals with high wind events the best. The wind doesn't have anything to grab and try to knock over. So the wind naturally flows around our building, resulting in negligible, if zero damage to our structure. And so the interesting thing about a round building, and you're gonna get a kick out of this. So will your audience.
I'm ready.
So in the United States, without exception, every baby boomer that we've spoken with said that's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. There's no way I'm ever going to buy that or live in it.
Mhm.
And we said, okay, fair enough. Now, conversely, the younger generation, say Generation Z and younger, they absolutely love the ZSphere and what we have because it aligns very, it's very compatible, aligns very closely with their desire to be sustainable, to live very minimalist type of lifestyles, just very predictable operating expenses. Think about this. The people over in Europe, I post regularly in LinkedIn. I encourage everyone to go out and find us on LinkedIn. I post regularly about the challenges that we're facing in the very near future about increasing energy costs, etc. And so one of the unique value propositions that ZSphere brings to the table is that we've created a 100% off-grid capable lifestyle and business building. So what does that mean? That means as your power company costs per kilowatt go up, as your wastewater and water, municipal services, as those go up in expense, you're having to deal with increasing operating costs in traditional buildings. What we've done is we've provided our clients with the option to go 100% off grid, meaning that you're not going to have a power bill, you're not going to have a water bill, you're not going to have those other expenses that are going to be very challenging in the near future. And let me give you an example. Most people don't know, because our media doesn't report on this a whole lot here in the United States. Most people don't realize that the natural gas prices that, and I'm going to start with industrial, producers, because Germany is a huge industrial producer for all of Europe. The industrial consumers of natural gas in Germany are paying 5 times the cost for the natural gas a year from now than they are this year.
Wow.
So in other words, they have to buy, because they use natural gas in so much volume, they have to buy their gas in advance, right? Right now, they're paying 5x for that 1-year future contract. So how many households or businesses can afford a 5x increase in their operating expense? You can't. And so for your audience, the name of the game in the future is going to be stable, predictable operating costs for your buildings. Whether you're selling residential or you're selling commercial real estate, whatever it may be, that is going to be the key to your success in the future. I highly encourage your audience to begin to look at buildings that have higher energy efficiency standards in terms of the way that they were built. Do they have solar? Do they have water cisterns, rainwater capture and things like that? Do they have those things that are going to help offset or eliminate these very unpredictable operating costs in the future?
Yeah, those
And
are all
and
such important things, right?
and going back to my comment about the baby boomers versus the younger generations, when we went to Puerto Rico and the Caribbean in general, they have experienced so much pain from these repeat events that they're ready for a change. We have not had one person say, I'm never going to live in that. Instead, what we've seen is your ZSphere does everything you say it's going to do, and it does. If it says it's going to do that, I'm going to do that all day long. And that's residential, that's municipal, as well as commercial businesses. Because as you can imagine, commercial businesses and municipalities get devastated just as much as residential does. So they're all faced with the same very real challenges. So if your audience is wondering why we went to the Caribbean first, it was because the barrier to entry in the Caribbean was much, they have dealt with a lot more pain here in recent history than the US, and they're on islands, right? So they're much more dependent on external sources for their power and their food and things like that. So there's a natural tendency for them to desire to be more independent and resilient when those hurricanes happen. And so, coming back to the US, we've also got a very significant baby boomer generation that has a significant amount of wealth. And so it didn't make sense for us to come here to the US until those younger generations, which they now are, so our timing is right, those younger generations, as they're getting to the point where affordability works for them in being able to build or purchase a new home, it makes sense for us to work in the US, and we're just now starting to begin to go to market and look for visionary developers and real estate, agents, developers here in the US that are going to do our first communities here in the US. And naturally, it makes sense for us to focus down here in the southeastern US, places like Louisiana or South Florida, maybe the Keys, or even the Central Florida and Panhandle of Florida. So I ask your audience, we are looking for visionary developers to work with and collaborate on our first resilient, fully self-sustaining and off-grid communities here in the US, and we'd love to hear from you. Our website is myzsphere.com. Don't hesitate to reach out to us and be part of something very truly unique in the real estate space.
Wow. Well, you've covered a lot. I have a couple questions I'd like to put out there. I read on your
Certainly.
website that it also can help with fires. I mean, with climate change and the wildfires, how does it do with that?
Yeah, absolutely, Patty. So a large value proposition that we're providing for our clients is we have an extremely versatile system. And so the ZSphere is and can be tailored to the specific geography where you're building. So let's say it's California, right? California is prone to earthquakes in certain areas as well as fires, okay? And so we have full earthquake isolation ability, meaning that when the ground is shaking, your building is not.
Wow.
And so full earthquake isolation, as well as we have an exterior. The way that we do our exteriors, it allows us to incorporate fireproof materials in our exterior finishing so that those fireproof materials will protect the building, during a fire, and certainly protect the contents and your investment in general. So incredible fire resilience and earthquake resilience. We talked about hurricanes. We're also extremely flood resilient. So oftentimes in the Caribbean, they experience significant storm surge. Most people don't know that Abaco Island in the Bahamas with Hurricane Dorian experienced anywhere from a 16 to a 20-foot storm surge, massive storm surge. And so we've created a system that allows the sphere during a flood or a storm surge event, it actually allows the sphere to rise in place
my
as
goodness.
as those floodwaters, happen or storm surge happens. And then when the water subside, the structure merely settles back down into place.
That
So
is
we've got some,
absolutely amazing. Yeah.
yeah. So we've done some very unique things in a single package. So very, very high value in a single package and incredibly resilient, designed for investment protection over a very long period of time. I mentioned early on, our structure is designed for 100 years of useful life. So actually 100 or more years of useful life. And this even goes for coastal areas like saltwater, exposure, things like that. We're designed for those very harsh environments as well. So, in today's world of radically increasing construction material costs, shortages of labor, lack of insurance, and just a general increase in cost to build, whether it's residential, commercial, or otherwise, our prospective clients are taking a very, very hard look at, does it make sense for me to build conventionally in this disaster-prone area, or should I consider something like a ZSphere, which is going to provide me the investment protection? Yes, I'm going to have to pay a premium for it, but at the end of the day, that premium is going to pay me dividends over the next many years.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I know you're focusing on disaster-prone areas, but in fact, almost every area can be prone to a disaster. Tornadoes in the Midwest. Of course, you're talking about the hurricanes, on the ocean, mudslides, fire. So it can happen just about anywhere.
Absolutely. Yeah, especially in our growing, age of climate change. And we don't look at climate change as strictly a human-driven phenomenon. We certainly haven't helped the problem, but at the end of the day, it's a larger phenomenon that we're seeing. Is the trends are in place. These very unpredictable floods, like we recently saw in Kentucky and places like St. Louis. We've had several 1,000-year flood events just in the last few months. So these events are going to continue to occur, and we are working with our clientele to position them to deal with those unexpected events in the future, not only in terms of protecting their personal lives and their assets, their sentimental things, but also business owners that can't afford that level of disruption. One of the things that ZSphere strives to do is keep business owners in business after a hurricane. The best thing that you can have is an operating business. If you're a doctor, for example, the best thing that you can have is an operating practice after a hurricane,
right?
Because all of your conventional competitors are going to be out of business. And so everyone is going to come to you. So those that invest in a ZSphere for their commercial businesses or otherwise are going to have a distinct competitive advantage. And that's a lot of what I wanted to share with you today for your audience, is focus on investing in buildings, whether they're traditional or something as high value as the ZSphere. Focus your efforts on selling and representing buildings that have high energy efficiency features, better insulation, better air conditioning, solar power, or whatever it may be. Those decisions and your building of knowledge and expertise in those areas are going to pay you significant dividends here in the near future.
Oh, absolutely. And, these are rather uncertain times. And I think it is very much on people's minds to be off the grid and not be dependent on other sources for anything, just an unstable, scary time to be living.
Absolutely, and that's a great point. So we're seeing a tremendous amount of interest and growing momentum in entire families wanting to build off-grid compounds in very rural areas. And so
Right.
we're collaborating and speaking with people about that. If there is anyone in your audience that's interested in pursuing that might have properties in rural areas, but they have challenges around cost effectively getting electricity and water and things like that to those very rural compounds, ZSphere has an answer. Because we operate 100% off grid, it will provide that off grid rural community the power and water and things that they need without having to rely on external sources and very costly sources for that.
Wow, that is really good to know. Oh, very exciting. And I just wanted to ask you a couple more things. Is there anyone else who is doing this, or are you just off on your own?
Yeah, so great question. So what we've seen in the marketplace is we've got competition. Our greatest competition is traditionality, right? People wanting to stay with traditional aesthetics and traditional function, et cetera. Very difficult for we as humans to embrace change.
Yeah.
So, right. So from a competition standpoint, traditional, approaches are still our greatest competition. We are seeing tremendous growth in the modular building space, in other niche spaces where they're trying to do off-grid and things like that. But we have not found an equal competitor in terms of the aggregate value proposition that ZSphere provides. So it's a very exciting time for us as far as that's concerned. Obviously, there'll be a tremendous amount of scrutiny and a lot of attention on us in our first units that we're building. And I'm very blessed to have a team of rock stars that when we set out to do something, we typically far exceed our objectives and expectation setting.
Wow.
So very exciting time.
Congratulations on that. And how are
Thanks,
you
Betty.
letting people know about it? How are they finding
Yeah,
out?
yeah. So we're doing more and more podcasts like this. I've got my marketing team is tremendous. They're doing a lot of um, discovery and outreach via platforms like LinkedIn and otherwise. We're not aggressively marketing here in the US for reasons that I've stated. We've done a tremendous amount of marketing down in Puerto Rico, mostly on the ground, grassroots type of things. So much so that we have an opportunity pipeline of several years of work down in Puerto Rico already, just Puerto
Wow.
Rico.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a tremendous amount of work ahead of us that we're going to fulfill. Now it's a matter of doing podcasts like yours and really raising awareness around this value proposition that it does exist, and really finding the next particular places and regions that we're going to go. And the reason that's meaningful is this, Patty. So we've also created a very unique, so people are probably asking, well, how do you deploy hundreds of units over the course of many months? Well, we've developed a very unique assembly and deployment model. So the ZSphere in about 18 months will be a 100% modular building. We'll have multiple floor plans, and we have three sizes. We have a 20-foot unit, which is really oriented towards the tiny home community. We have a 30-foot unit, and then we have a 50-foot unit. The 50-foot unit is really oriented towards commercial and municipal applications, or certainly a big home. But our 30-foot unit is about 1,000 square feet. It's got 2 stories. It's got a main floor and a lower floor. And that is really going to be that's going to be our wheelhouse in terms of most of what we produce, the 20 and the 30 especially. And so that said, in places like the Caribbean, which are very logistically challenged, they don't have great roads, they don't have great access to some of these remote areas, which frankly is why of the 30,000+ buildings that Puerto Rico lost in the hurricanes of 2017 and the earthquakes of 2020, they lost over 30,000 buildings, Betty. Of those 30,000 buildings, they may have in the last 5 years replaced a few thousand at most.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the huge problems that the Caribbean faces is being able to replace a lot of buildings in a short period of time. They're just not geared to do it. So what we've done is we've created a business model, a manufacturing and assembly factory operation that functions in such a way where we can work multiple shifts and we can build and create our buildings in a factory. And what we've done is we've focused on our buildings being lightweight, so they're very easy to transport. So one of the unique features and capabilities in enabling us to deliver buildings in volume on an island like Puerto Rico is we are in the process of finalizing our relationships and structure. We are going to airlift via helicopter our buildings to their installation location.
Wow.
And so what that does is that allows us literally to pick up our building at the factory, bring it to its destination, install it. And Patty, here's one of the other unique things about our entire business model. Once that building is attached to our structural base on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
there can be a category 5 building, a category 5 hurricane the next day, and our building is going to be and remain intact.
Well, you are certainly ahead of your time. It sounds like a space age.
we absolutely are.
That's amazing.
And so being able to utilize an airlift type of capacity allows us to deploy several buildings a day.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can imagine over the course of several months that we're able to deploy a lot of buildings, especially the critical buildings, the commercial buildings and the municipal buildings, things where thousands of people need and rely upon those microservices, et cetera. And then we'd certainly fill in the residential along with
Absolutely.
it along the way.
Well, I am so, impressed with what you've done and very honored that I had a chance to learn more about it. It is really remarkable. Would you once again share where people can learn more, especially developers, realtors? They may have questions for you, not only your website, but perhaps a contact?
Yeah, certainly. Please feel free to reach out. I'm one of those CEOs at this point in our growth and such. Yes, I'm very busy, but I do take the time to respond to emails. So my email is david@myzsphere. That's David at MY, the letter Z, and the word sphere, SPHERE.com.
Great.
And so, yes, any interested developers, anyone who's serious about a particular real estate property, whatever it may be, and they're interested in exploring what we have, I would absolutely love to talk to you, and we'll watch for those emails. And Patty, it's podcasts like yours that are allowing us to get the word out and everything else. So I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and your audience today.
Well, and we appreciate you too. Thank you so much, David, for being on Icons of Real Estate.
You're welcome.